So I'm the youngest.
How old are
Gay's
you?
73.
Okay, Gay will be 75 in September on the 29th.
And I'm 76.
That didn't tell me squat.
That shows that you're
I want-
the
I want-
youngest. She's
I want the age gap is what I wanted, but that's all right.
and I'll be 78 July the 5th. I was almost a firecracker.
Well, I can remember when Daddy's going to sleep in the chair and he's got the cigarette in his hand and it's burning down and the ashes are starting to, and us watching to see what he would do to make the ashes fall. That was funny.
I can remember when Daddy was in that chair, because I don't think it was on Fairmount Road. I think it was the old house. And he would fall asleep in the chair, and I'd just crawl up in his lap and curl up real close because he was nice and warm. And we both sleep.
Well, the best one that nobody knew until years later, if I'm not mistaken, it was Thanksgiving. Ronnie and Paul had come in. We had all the leaves on the table in the dining room. And somebody asked for a roll, and the next thing you knew, everybody was throwing rolls. And about 5, maybe 10 years later, we were taking the blinds down and there was a roll stuck up in behind the curtain.
And the funny thing about it, it was burnt.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason the rose got thrown. I was a neat freak. My sisters were slobs in the bedroom. We all shared a bedroom. And they could take their clothes off and just throw them on the floor. I would hang mine up. Then they'd want to borrow mine. I said no. And really, for the most part, the girls got along okay until the boys in the antique house that we lived in crawled across the floor into our bedroom and would just reach up and grab us. We would scream bloody murder. You remember?
Yep.
Was this Bardstown Road?
Yes.
Bardstown Road. And you invited Doris first, Peanuts, or Faye
Holt.
over one night. And we got the hardback bugs and put them in the bed, and you all went to bed, and about a half hour later, all this screaming.
Oh, it was terrible. These little crawly things all over you.
Boy, did we get in trouble. When Daddy said go get a switch, and it better not break, you knew you was in trouble.
At that house also there were good memories of the guys crawling across the floor to get us. They had little cubby holes like for closets and went way deep. So we would go in there. After they found out our hiding place, they had built a tree house off of the roof from our house into that tree, and we'd all crawl in there, hide as fast as we could. I mean, we've had worms squish through the screens and heads and everything else. So, it was a creepy time.
The house on Bardstown Road was different. You went upstairs, you had a big room on one side and a big room on the other side and a bathroom in the middle. All the girls stayed on one side and boys stayed in the other. A lot of times when we'd run out of coal and it'd be so cold upstairs, we'd take the mattress off of Brian's bed and put it on my bed. We'd both get underneath it. And a lot of times, Mom and Dad's room was off of one of the
Dining room.
Living room, dining room, whatever. And we had killed hogs one year. And I took the head of the hog and was opening and closing its mouth and chasing them through the house. And they went up in Daddy's bathroom and locked the door, and I set the hog head on the chair I think they was in there for a couple hours. I don't know. I don't remember. But I got in trouble for that too. Just like we raised domestic rabbits, and I'd kill rabbits on Saturday. And if I hit them in the head and the eyeballs popped out, I'd take and tie a string on it, put it in the freezer, and give it to the girls for a necklace.
What about the time that you chased me through the house and I went into Mother and Daddy's bathroom and locked the door? You brought a ladder up the outside and you were squishing something. I don't know. I didn't look.
I think it was an eyeball. I think it had thawed out.
Thank goodness.
But that's like the time I put the pig ears behind mine and chased y'all through the house.
Sick.
But
These could be very scary times. But you know, I don't remember a lot of stories about Ronnie and Paul.
I have one about Paul. Paul went to the basement and built a little shop around some of the poles that hold the house up, and he took burlap and wrapped it around the poles and made walls so he could secure his stuff inside that little burlap room that he created. And so we would pull the staples out and reach in through the wall into his stuff and borrow his tools, which he hated.
What house was that?
Bardstown Road, where it had the 3 sections of
Yeah.
basement. Well, Paul was in the center section where he made his little room.
And that really wasn't like a basement. It was more like a cellar type, right?
I would say yes, especially because it was kind of broken into 3 rooms to be able to support the floor upstairs.
it had the coal stove in the middle, and the coal was in one end, and Paul's stuff was on the other end.
They have good memories. I don't remember all that.
Well, you didn't hang out in the basement
You're right.
and borrow tools. Borrow tools.
Did you ever take them back?
9 times out of 10, probably. It's that
But he knew
one-
we was in there.
He was not a happy camper sometimes.
Well, talking about Paul, I remember when we had the house built on Fairmount Road, and the kitchen was kind of small, and the dining room was a little bigger, and then the family room circumferenced it. Well, Paul had this black line across the floor between the family room and the kitchen. And he says, "Don't any of you cross that line. And I mean it. Or you'll suffer the consequence." And I thought, I wonder what that consequence would be. So I tried to talk the boys into doing it. But he was very adamant about staying out of the kitchen. I haven't to this day figured out why, unless he didn't want us getting the peanut butter and jelly.
I think we were disruptive of the cooking parts.
Oh, well, that's right. Somebody was disruptive with the cooking parts. Randy was fixing breakfast one season, I guess it was Christmas, and he had fried up all this bacon. He was already doing the toast, and as fast as he was doing the toast, the bacon was disappearing. I mean, it was like there was no end to it.
I can't get ahead.
That's what he said.
Here's is it time for a car story?
Yes, that's what I was going to tell.
It's evening. Everybody's getting ready or is already in bed. And Daddy must have heard something because he heard a car come in the driveway, but it didn't come up. It stayed on the lower. You had to come up a hill to get to the garage. So it was on the straight lower part. And Daddy looks out the window and there's a strange car down there. He grabs his pants
And a gun.
and gun.
And a gun.
It was Ernest taking tags off of his old car, because the police were after him in the new car and he needed another license plate to put on the car. So as Daddy is getting down and out and into his car, Ernie's turning around and leaving, and now he's chasing Ernest down the highway, finding out who it is because he doesn't know the car or he can't see the car. And Ernest
Ernest
is
had his lights off, didn't he?
and Ernie.
Had my lights
You
on.
had lights off.
He turns down a farmer's field as he's in the woods, leaving across the bridge and leaving. Ernie goes down through the woods and Daddy's chasing him. But I think, Ernie, that's where Daddy passed you
Daddy passed us,
and didn't see where
Us.
he
Who
went.
was the us?
me and Clark Cundiff.
Clark Cundiff.
We had been out and just acting crazy like teenagers. And I pulled out in front of this old man and he started hollering and cussing and said he's gonna call the police and all this stuff. And we was gonna stay out all night. I said, man, we gotta figure something out here. I'm the only one that had a car. So I said, well, we're gonna take tags off one of my other ones. And we did, and Daddy called us.
Well,
Till the day he died, he did not know it was us.
so he didn't really catch you.
Yeah, he didn't catch it. Mom knew it was us and did not tell him. But I told him in the hospital right before he died.
He didn't laugh, though, did he?
No, he said, I figured that, but I couldn't, I wasn't for sure. But Mom never told him, and I never told him until then. But
I wouldn't tell anybody because I couldn't believe you really did that.
I'm surprised you didn't get shot.
If he'd got close enough, he'd have got shot.
well, I knew the old car Daddy was driving wasn't gonna catch mine.
Ernest got in trouble the most. He was the most conniving.
He deserved every minute of it. I was the best. Never got in trouble.
I think I was the only one that got suspended at least 5 times from school for just silly stuff. I mean,
And I never got it suspended.
Didn't either. I couldn't believe he did.
I carried a snake in school one day, and principal caught me with all the girls standing on the desk and wouldn't cuss the principal out because I thought he'd had my car towed.
Are you saying you were wrong?
Yep, Clark wouldn't have had my car. It was, I had keys made. Clark and I was best friends. I said, now, if you ever need my car, I said, let me know. I said, you know where it's at. Well, time went by and the principal made an announcement that says no students allowed to park at the community center, which was right across the street. Well, you know me, hey, I ain't paying no attention to that. So I parked my car over, and Clark went to get it one day and forgot to tell me. And when school was out, I went over to get it, and it was gone. And the first thought, wasn't thinking about nothing else, the principal had it towed. So I walked in the office, I said, where in the hell is my car? That's all it took. You're out of here. Then I found out Clark had it,
Did you apologize?
No. The bad part was I could not go back to, I ran away from home. I went down to Larry Stroud's house, and I told, at that time his mom and dad, we call him Uncle and Aunt Lolly. I said, look, I'm going to stay here down here for a while. I'm going to stay in the basement. Is that okay? Sure. Then I got suspended. Could not go back to school until I went back home. So when I got back home, and all it took was Mother to say, wait till your daddy gets home, I knew I was in trouble. Yeah. But it all worked out. I made it through school. I'm still alive.
Well, you did graduate.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Brownie the Bull.
Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Now Ernie's
Paul got married to Annette's mother, Catherine, who lived in Indiana, and they had a farm. And her, Paul's father-in-law gave him a Brahma bull. So we kept it over in the, out there in the barn. We had barns where we were living. And somebody gave me a pig. It had a rupture on its stomach. And Dad and I pushed the rupture back up in, taped it with duct tape and stuff. And it took care of the pig. I mean, you know. But the bad thing is the pig and the bull stayed together. And if you went in to feed the pig slop, the cow ate it too, you know. And Daddy would bring donuts home in big tall bags that were 2 and 3 days old. So before we'd feed the donuts to the pig, we'd eat the icing off of it. And then the pig would get out and the bull would find a way out. If he couldn't go through the hole the pig went through, he went through the fence or over the fence. So we decided to put a log chain around his neck and concrete block. But that was a bad mistake, because the pig got out and the bull went over the fence and tore out about 5 fence posts and everything. And of course we had to fix that, but we'd get a call from a neighbor said, hey, your bull and pig's over here in our backyard, you know. So we'd have to go get it. And then the best part of it was, one day we decided we was going to ride the bull. So I was feeding Brownie. When you got on, I was feeding Brownie, so I tied a rope around his horns and let him outside. And I got on the back. Brown wanted to ride, so I got him on there. And that bull took off through this cornfield. Brian falls off. Bull runs over him. I'm holding on for dear life. It was funnier than the devil.
I remembered you being in the barn and the first time you got on the bull.
Oh, it threw us off?
Yeah. I could not believe it would be dumb enough.
Well, I didn't want it to get away, but it got away that day. But after about, I don't know, we had the bull 5 years or so. Getting it, having to go neighbor house, pulling it, getting it back in, and this, that, and other. Dad said he's gonna sell them. So we're all sitting down for supper one night.
Oh no!
Everybody's there, and I said, I don't know what we were eating, but I took a bite of something. I said, this tastes just like Brownie. About that time, Sharon, Gay, Sue, all of them shoved their plate back. They wouldn't eat another bite.
We were the only smart people in the family.
But really, it didn't come from Brownie. That was the funny part.
When I was little, I can remember being on the floor on my back, Doug trying to hit me, and I'm holding him up with my feet on his chest, holding him up in the air, and he couldn't reach down to hit me because my legs were longer than his arms.
And he was hollering for help.
Probably.
Well, if he wasn't, something was wrong with him.
I'm talking about me.
That's what I'm
Okay.
talking about.
Okay.
I can't think of none unless when Doug hit me in the head with a hammer or I made him mad.
That's usually what happens when you
Then
make
we were carrying brick, and I crossed over into his lane of the road and he hit me in the head with a brick. And I think that's when I threw mine at him and ran.
Here's a good one. We would be home, pretty much the whole family's at home. Daddy is in the recliner. He may have been watching TV, but now he is like this in his recliner. And his mouth is open and his upper teeth had fallen down.
Yeah.
And we would come by and take his teeth out of his mouth and go hide them. And he'd wake up and want to know where his teeth were. And of course, we would hesitate as long as we could until he threatened to kill us. Or maybe he would have his belt off hanging around his neck from a previous engagement and he would threaten us. But that was too funny. When Daddy's talking to us with no teeth in and looking.
Look and see. How old were you then? I don't remember that part.
We were on Fairmount Road.
Yes.
So
And
I was probably in college.
and if I checked my what do you call them? My ID cards from school, whatever you would call them, it probably has dates on them.
It was Mother's birthday. I think everybody was there. I don't think Ronnie and Paul was, but I think Sue was still at the house on Bardstown Road. We were all in the kitchen. Everybody, of course, Mom's opened presents, and we're all talking to this. And I took my present and gave it to her, and she opened it up, and it was about a 2.5, 3 foot garden snake. She throwed that box,
Bet
and
she
the
did.
girls scattered. I got into trouble again. But,
Mother did not like snakes.
No.
So she goes out to hang out clothes there on Old Bardstown Road, and she reaches in for her clothespins, and there's a snake. She threw that up in the air, and she hollered,
Ernest Ray.
Ernest Ray. I'll tell you, we thought she was going to pass out.
I thought Daddy would kill me.
If she'd have passed out, he would have.
Yeah. But that was like a little. I was in art class at school, and we went outside to draw pictures and all this stuff. There was a little garden snake, just I don't know, 6, 8 inches long. So I picked it up, stuck it in my pocket. I didn't think nothing about it. And we got in class, and it got out of my pocket and was going across the floor. And when the principal went by, the women were standing in the desk. Of course, I got in trouble with that too.
Wonder why.
I think I got suspended too. But Gay got me back in that time. Gay signed my note. Of course, Gay signed a lot of my notes. And
Now that would match Daddy's writing, but not Mother's.
yeah. But Gay got me out of trouble a whole lot of times too. But she got me in trouble a whole lot of times too. That's the way it was. It seemed like I stayed in trouble 24/7.
We were playing kick the can in the barn. And everybody, you could go down into the stalls like this, little openings, but there was no border around the steps. You had to know to jump over it. Well, Brian was being chased, and he didn't jump over it. He fell down the steps. And he's laying down there screaming his bloody head off. And we went down there. We thought he was dying. And I said, come on, stand up. He stood up, and he said, and then I just, like that, knocked him out of it. He was fine. He went running to the house. Mother Sharon smacking me again. Isn't that right?
That's pretty close as best I can remember. Because I think I'm only remembering reruns, not the original.
Oh. Well, if you remember anything, it's not a rerun.
It is when you repeat it, and that's how I remember.
Let me see the rest of your notes. Oh, we had a concrete block around a cistern, and you had to pick up the lid of it, and the water was there if we had to dip it out. What does he do? He goes over and looks in, falls in, and then we had to pull him out with a bucket to get him up out of the cistern. I didn't smack you then.
Not as best I remember.
Well, one of you all put one of the dogs into the outhouse.
That was you.
And I thought we held Brian by his feet and lowered him down the hole and grabbed the dog.
Thank goodness I don't remember that.
I don't think it was, Brian might have been on the end of it, but the dog was put in a bucket. And Brian brought it back up.
Might have been. I don't remember. All I know is we lowered somebody down inside the outhouse and picked up the dog.
Brian was the only one little enough.
Yeah, to go through the hole.
I would love to brag about my braveness, but I think maybe it was a con job. I'm not sure.
Oh Well, I remember that because I couldn't believe they took the dog in with them to the John, and when they stood up, the dog just fell in.
I can believe that.
Well, then maybe it was you.
I don't think it was me.
Well, then it was probably Brian. He took it to
Yeah.
the potty with him.
Brian or Jay.
Well, she in here to defend herself, so I don't know.
We'll blame it on Gay. Yeah, we used to have persimmon fights, dirt clod fights,
Oh,
and walnut fights. And Doug would get hit several times and get mad. Matter of fact, one time, I'm thinking it was dirt clods.
it was dirt clods.
Pat Pierce and Richard Schwartz was over there. And Pat Pierce hit him in the head. And Doug got mad, was chasing him, and picked up this sickle. It was the blade off of a big hand sickle, and threw it at Pat, and it stuck in the smokehouse door and scared the you know what out of Pat, and he took off and he jumped this fence like it wasn't even there. He never came back to our house again.
Do you remember when we were having a dirt clod fight? Doug was in it. I remember this very well. Doug caught Ernie, had him down on the ground, and was choking him. And I looked around for anything to get him off of him, and I picked up this limb and I hit him on the back.
It
And
was
he
a fence post.
Well, whatever it was, he started after me, and I could outrun him. That's all I know, because there's a story about Ronnie too. You know, we were in Gatlinburg. We were at a restaurant at the top of the mountain, and Ronnie went down to see. They had a bear, and the bear was climbing in the dumpster, and he and this woman, we don't even know who the woman was, but he went over and he was going to take a picture of it. Well, then the bear turned around, and Ronnie said, the only thing I knew was, if I get out of here in front of her, the bear will get her. So, I mean, they were running lickety split.
All I got to do is beat this woman.
That's right. Go run faster than this woman. I got it made.
Yeah, don't let the outrun the bear, just outrun the woman. Here's a story about Paul. He was gone. Honestly, I don't really remember what he was doing or anything, but on his way home, he got hit by a drunk driver, and he was in the hospital for over a year. I mean, it messed him up pretty good.
It knocked him into this metal pole that signs are put on, and it tore up his insides.
And
He was 16 then.
Yeah, after he got out of the hospital and got a job, he was smart enough to get insurance to cover anything like that if anything happened to him through the rest of his life. But he did. He had a rough time there for a long time, and that was about the time that I think he turned Daddy Studebaker over.
Was the Studebaker a new car?
It was fairly new.
Because I didn't learn that till later in life, that Paul had mentioned that he was driving Daddy's new car.
Yeah.
And he got too close to a ditch and rolled it over. And it's like, you've got to be kidding me.
And he didn't kill you?
That's it. That's kind of what
I'll be honest, I don't even think he got in trouble. Matter of fact,
maybe Daddy felt sorry.
truth be known, I probably caused it. But I don't.
You caused the wreck?
No, I said if somebody was to throw the blame, it'd have been me. Talking about the brothers, Ronnie. And it hasn't been that long ago. We went up there, Carolina, and we all going out to eat. And Ronnie says, well, we're all sitting down at the table. He says, I'm going to the bathroom. He goes to the bathroom, he comes out, there's toilet paper strung from his shirt 5 foot back, dragging across the floor. He comes up and sits down. He pulls it out of his shirt and he lays it down, smooths it out. And he pulls his ink pen out. He said, "Who we want to talk about?" And waitress comes up and says, she picks all the toilet paper up. He started taking orders, and asked Ronnie, said, "What do you want?" He said, "I want something to eat." But she said, "Well, what do you want?" He said, "Something to eat." She said, "I'll take a steak." She said, "How you want it?" "I want it cooked." He said, "How you want it cooked?" He said, "Cooked." And this went on back and forth, back and forth. He said, "Just knock his horns off and kick his ass out here." But Ronnie was always a jokester. He could come up, he could come up with some stories. He'd sing songs and make them up himself, and just stuff like that. And
Very easygoing.
yeah,
He wasn't easygoing when he and I were doing an electrical job. Now, the day before, we had been to the supply house, and he's buying a new set of cutting pliers. And he goes and gets them, and he's got several up there on the counter, and he'd hold them up and look at them to make sure when he closed them that the blades were closing, it would cut clean and all this. So he goes through all this rigmarole. The next day, we're working, and he says, "Take this end of the wire out to the panel and hook it into the panel, and we'll take the other end in here, and I'll hook it up at the dryer." And so I said, "Okay." Well, little did I know that I was faster than him, because I had my end hooked up and turned on the power as I was walking down to where Ronnie was on the other end, that he should have hooked up the plug already, as it went and shorted out because he cut it with the pliers and it was hot already. His brand new pliers didn't last one day. And he didn't kill me.
Well, you lived past that.
That was too funny, though. He never said a word. I was surprised.
and old man Sharik.
Who's that?
That's the old man that had the dump in the back. We'd go back there in the dump and collect valuable things.
Yeah, boy.
One of them was a shield that a kid would use to be a knight in shining
Right.
armor
Yeah.
type thing, because I put bolts and nuts back on it and got the straps hooked up to where I could hold it. When we had a dirt clod fight,
Okay.
I could actually get down and hide behind the shield, and it'd go clang, 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 and it didn't hit me.
Well, what is this? Falcon off Bardstown Road.
I'm coming down Bardstown Road in the rain over the hill headed toward Floyd's Fork Creek. It used to be there. Coming down the hill, and it was raining, and I moved over to the right too far, and it dropped off the asphalt into that little tiny gutter. Not really a creek, just a little gutter. But when I pulled it back up, it grabbed somehow. Anyway, I came back up, and it grabbed, and it went into the street, spun around backwards. I'm now in the other lane going down the hill backwards, sliding, and it hit the guardrail, jumped up on the guardrail with the back tire. Jumped up on the guardrail with the back tire. Now the guardrail is under the license plate coming off behind the front tire on the driver's side, backwards in the other lane. So it came to a stop there with three wheels up off the ground and a big old downhill on the far side, on the passenger side. Now it's a passenger side because I'm backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it ended up when I had to call a wrecker. Don't ask me how I did it or who or whatever, because this was before cell
Oh,
phones.
I thought the car blew up and you died.
No, but it was far down that hill. It was a long way down. Matter of fact, I'll bet you it looked very close to like here to that road down the hill
Yeah.
on the other side. It was a long way. It was a long way.
I'm surprised when you went down the hill, it didn't flip.
It didn't go down the hill.
Oh,
It went up on the
Guardrail
guardrail
stopped.
and
stopped
stayed.
it.
So
That's the reason our guardrails are all messed up in Louisville.
that one anyway, yeah. Being an electrician, being on the forklift on the board rather than a cage of some sort, and falling off of it at height and not getting killed, yeah, it's a miracle I'm alive.
God's been good to you.
He saved me on several occasions, I would say. That's one of them.
I remember 2 heart attacks as another time.
Well, I was in an attic, real thick insulation up in the attic of this house. Annette is bringing me breakers to put in the panel. She had to change one of them for some reason. I don't think it was her fault. I think it was just something about the make or model or whatever. And as she was changing the breaker for swapping it out, I went ahead and was hooking up other things. Well, one of them is I made something hot that shouldn't have normally been hot yet because I didn't have the other breaker or something.
He burnt down my house.
And when it shocked me, I could not let go. I was already on my knees working on the wood floor, and I couldn't fall. I was already on my knees. I couldn't fall. And how I came off of that electricity, I have no earthly idea. But it finally quit, and I could breathe again.
That's good.
But electric stuff is scary.
Christmas time was always good at the house growing up. Daddy would always wait till the last minute to get a tree. Sometimes he'd celebrate a little bit too much. He'd forget the tree. A lot of times we'd go buy tree lots that had already shut down Christmas Eve, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Go in there and get us a tree.
Were they free then?
Yes.
When nobody's there, yep.
I don't think anybody would go by on
Or
Christmas
he'd
Day.
come in about 10, 11, 12, 1. Mom would wake me up and said, "Your daddy did not get a tree. Go get one." So I'd get a flashlight and an axe. I'd go out in the middle of the woods and I'd look, and I'd see something looking awful good. I'd cut it down, drag it home, put it on the porch, go to bed. Tradition was nobody decorated the tree until you're married. So we get up in the morning. The youngest one was first and lined up the steps and across the balcony, their landing. Walked downstairs, and that's the prettiest tree you ever saw in your life.
Keeping in mind we were children.
Mother would do it all. And as everybody got married, I think Sharon and Ronnie got to help first, and then we did. I got to help next. Then Gay and Stanley got married, and we'd be up there, and Stanley and I had beards, and we'd hang ornaments in our beard and just act goofy. And Mom would make pumpkin pies, and we'd get a pie and a fork and chow down.
A piece of pie or the whole pie?
The
The
whole
whole
pie.
pie.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And times that she'd make fresh bread, Brian and I would go in and get a loaf of bread, break it in half, go outside and eat it. She could cook. Now Sharon fixes pumpkin pies, and I get a pumpkin pie every once in a while.
I buy mine at Costco's.
It's
You don't
not
know-
nearly as good.
You don't know what you're missing.
It's the best I can do.
Having older brothers and sisters and everything, and Brian and I growing up, then toward the end of the pack of 8. When Daddy would say, "Go out and get a switch and don't let it break," everybody would tell the story about Ronnie. Ronnie was the oldest. He lived down on Eastview, Ronnie would get in trouble. And Daddy, when he whipped you, he'd hold your hand. So
Isn't that sweet?
Ronnie got in trouble and he goes out and gets him a switch. Daddy comes in, takes a switch, grabs his hand. About that time, Ronnie hollers, "Oh, you hurt my little finger. You hurt my little finger." He's jumping up and down, holding his hand. "You hurt my little finger." And my dad get laughing so much, he couldn't whip him anymore. Well, by the time it got my age, that didn't work. But Mom didn't punish us that much, but when she said, "Wait till your daddy gets home," you knew you was in trouble.
That's right.
And I got grounded so many times. Bardstown Road especially, because they'd ground me and I said, "Well, I'm going to bed." I'd go upstairs, climb out the window, climb down the tree, and take off. A lot of times they didn't know I was gone. Sometimes they found out.
Then you found out they knew.
Yeah. Yep, Mama was a sweet lady, but she she knew when, I guess it's the mother's instinct, you know, just like the car deal, switching the tags and everything. She knew it was me. You know, she knew I did this, she knew I did that, but she never told on me. She let me know she knew sometimes, but that's about it.
That made you feel real bad, didn't it?
Yeah. But did it stop me? No.
Nope.
I thought, well, if I got away with it this time, I can do it again.
Mom was very easygoing until she finds a snake in her clothespin bag.
I'm not sure.
And she was always ready to listen. Sometimes Daddy wasn't there to listen. And I remember having a fight with Daddy. I was in college, and I'd come home for the weekend, and I'd tell him that I would really like to see him in church with Mom. And he says, "You are not going to a Christian college and coming home preaching to me, woman." And he said, he was like that until the time that at college I went sleigh riding in a pair of slacks, and the college said, "You cannot wear slacks sleigh riding. This is a Christian school." They wanted me to wear a dress over the slacks and go sleigh riding. So I called Daddy and says, "I got demerits for sleigh riding in slacks." And he called and chewed the dean out like you wouldn't believe. And I think that's one time he really took up for me. And I still remember it to this day very well. But Mother said, well, I wanted to go with him, but he would not let me. And I think it's because she's easier going than what he was. But that was a good memory of Daddy and Mother. But Mother was going to make sure we all knew how to cook. And we did. Sue and this is the girls. Sue and Gay and I all could make pumpkin pies that were wonderful. And I got her chocolate fudge recipe, and I made that for Ronnie and Paul and Brian and Ernie, all the guys. Now, Doug couldn't have it. He was diabetic. But Doug would say, just one piece, just one piece. And I'd take it up to the nursing home and give him one piece. But it was really funny. After Mother died, Doug became very sentimental. You could tell part of his life was over too. And then when Daddy and then Paul, when Paul passed, it was because Doug lived with Paul for a while. I remember going to Doug at the nursing home and saying, "Doug, I have some bad news." He said, "What is it?" I said, "Paul passed away." And I said, "I want you to think about that and pray and remember when they have church here to go to church? He says, well, I'm not ready to go now. that was the last conversation we had of that. So I don't remember Doug ever mentioning Mother after she passed, which is unusual because he was very attached to her. So
Mom had a heart of gold, though. We were in high school. I didn't have my license. I think I was 16, but I didn't have my license because I got caught hot water in Mom's car, and Debbie wouldn't sign for me. So we had the band, and nobody had their license. Mom had a station wagon, and we talked her into taking us to go to play at different gigs. And after it was all over with, sometimes she'd stay, sometimes she'd leave and come back and get us. We stopped at Jerry's, and we'd get in there and we'd embarrass her to death, and she would say, boys, I'm not doing this again. And the next weekend, she's right there. We'd do it all again. But I always depended on her to get us there.
how many of the gig is still there, still alive?
There's two of us, Larry Stroud and myself. Larry Stroud played rhythm guitar. Our drummer's dead, lead guitar's dead, and one of the rhythm guitar guys is dead. Larry turned out to be a doctor. He wasn't satisfied with that, so he went back to school, and he's a dentist now. Yeah, it was funny. Barb and I went down there to see him at his dentist office, and she was wanting to get some implants. This is when they first started coming out with implants and stuff. And he measured her mouth, and he looked and looked, took x-rays. He said, well, I tell you what I'm going to do. He said, we're good friends. We went to school together and everything. He said, I'm going to cut you a deal. Said, I'll only charge you $14,000. And I said, that's a deal?
They're expensive.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
But we got back in the car to come on. She says, ain't no way I'm spending that kind of money.
Not in my mouth.
I was a lead singer. I played bass guitar on one song. I can't even think what it is. It's a drum solo. And Larry Duncan could play that like no other man. I mean, it was good. I can't think of what the name of the song was now. But I played bass on that. But other than that, I was lead singer. Larry Duncan played the drums. Larry Stroud was rhythm. Ray Johnson and Cecil Riley were rhythm, guitar, and bass. And talking about Doug, he could talk to anybody like he knew them all his life. And he came home one day and he gave me this card. He said, "You're supposed to call this guy because he might put you on television." I said, "Okay, Doug, yeah." I look at the card. It's Dick Clark. So I called him, and he said that he wanted us to come down for an interview. So I told the guys, I said, "Boys, we're going downtown." I said, we might be on television." Everybody started laughing. I said, "No, Doug hooked us up." And I said, I handed him the card. I said, "We're supposed to go see this man Thursday." We all cut school, matter of fact, and went down there, and it was Dick Clark. We played on High Variety, and we played on Teen Beat. And we were asked to join the Joni agency, but we only had 5 guys, and they want at least 6 or 7. So we never did join. But Doug hooked us up with Dick Clark, who's everybody knows Dick Clark had the New Year's Eve show for years, and had and was in charge of High Variety and Team Beat, and we played on both of them.
Did you get a copy of it?
No, matter of fact, Barb called the radio station and television stations and said back then they didn't keep stuff like that. But we just had the memory. Roustabouts. We all had Beetle boots, 3-inch heels.
Can you see him with those?
He probably
We
looked
had
tall.
black shirts with stripes down the front of it. We wore black paints, the Beetle boots, and back then, summertime when Mama cut your hair, she used, I call it pitchforks. She took them shears and put them forks on her. That's how short your hair was. And I begged and begged. I wanted my hair to grow, you know. Daddy said, when you start paying for it, you can wear it longer to a certain extent. So that next summer I got a lawnmower and I started making money and I started paying for my own haircuts. And I could wear it a little bit, you know, decently long. But yeah, we had the band for, oh shoot. Well, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 4 years. And we'd rent the community center on Friday night, and after the football and basketball games, we'd have the band would play, and all the people come over and pay to hear us play, and we made enough money to give us some pocket change and to pay to rent the building and stuff, and just had a good old
Too
time.
young.
Then, of course, school was out. Everybody was seniors. School was out. Clark got killed in a car wreck. Ray Johnson and Cecil got drafted. I got married. Then Larry Duncan got married, and that kind of tore everything up. We just had memories then.
Did you guys play down at Highlight Country Club?
Yes. Our biggest gig was the Green Door Cafe downtown. They paid us good. If I'm not mistaken, it was a little over $300. But it was a wild bunch too. But we made everybody made a little bit of money that night. But it was rented that and played at different places, parties. And matter of fact, Stan Schreiner, preacher's son, had a party, and we set up a hay wagon and played out there. And then I started dating a girl that was there, and she ended up marrying my best friend, one of my best friends. But it was a good old time. You have to know Doug, though.
Yeah.
He'd take off from the house, head to Carolina. He'd be on, well, one time he rode his moped, and they caught him on 71.
Interstate 71.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they called me, and I had to go up and get him. He took off one time on his bicycle, headed to Carolina, and I think he got somewhere up around Stanford or I don't think he made it to Mount Vernon, but he blew a tire or something, and I think he ended up giving his bike to somebody or selling it to him for a couple of dollars, but he made it to Carolina. And then another time, him and Daddy got into it, and he took off, and Daddy knew where he was going, so Daddy got cleaned up and headed to Carolina. Doug was there about 3 or 4 hours before Daddy got there. He caught a ride with the truck driver. But he always knew where he's going. Always knew where he's going.
I like
What-
the part where Doug ordered
Oh,
a
yeah.
van in Paul's name, and it was delivered to Paul's house.
It was a brand new
Oh,
Suburban.
that's right. It was the nursing home.
He ordered a brand new Suburban and told him exactly what he wanted on it and the color he wanted. And they delivered it to the nursing home there on the road Ronnie lived on.
Salisbury Road.
Southbury Road, yeah. And when they delivered the truck and went in to get Doug, The nurses explained to him, and Paul got a little upset. He said, "Why didn't you let him sign for it? I could have drove it for a couple of days."
But Paul was upset when he thought he was going to have to pay for it.
Yeah. But Paul took care of Doug. He got
Did.
Doug got to do a lot of things that he might not would have got to. He got his driver's license, and I went up there one year, and he said, "Come on, we're going to the racetrack. I'm driving."
That
Scared
was
the heck
scary.
out of me, but he drove us up there, and he got us. Didn't cost us anything to get in. They knew Doug. I mean, Doug said, "This is my brother from Kentucky, and I brought him to watch the race." But everybody just was nice.
I remember going to North Carolina and Doug telling me he had his license, and my heart just went, and he says, and tomorrow when we go to church, I will drive. Well, he never drove over 30 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Cars were going around us, blowing their horns and everything else. I said, "Are you all right?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm all right."
They
We
blow
made it to church, too.
they blow the horn. He throw his hand up wave.
Yeah.
I don't know if he really realized why they were blowing, but it didn't matter to him.
That's right. I think that's the easy going that came out of Mother. Mother was easy going with him. Daddy was more stern.
I drove, it was midnight. I was halfway to Mount Washington and stopped at the little place next to Floyd's Fork Creek, little restaurant. So I stopped in for a cup of coffee, and somebody was in there I knew. And he said, "You want to go ahead and eat breakfast?" I said, "Yeah, let me go move my car so I can see it, and I'll be right back." I went out. The car had already been stolen. I wasn't there even long enough to drink one cup of coffee. So the next day, I'm looking around, trying to figure out where it may have gone or whatever. And I believe I finally went to the police station, and they said we found one in a pond over here off of whatever road it was, Waterford. And so they had towed it in, and not only had they stolen it and dumped it in a lake, they also took a knife and ripped the top of the seat back of the seats, and gotten my tools out of the trunk. And I had a nice little conversion for an 8-track player that played in the car. My buddy Tim Dench's brother or uncle had rewired a little box to let it play in the house, plugged into the household current. So it was pretty handy that you could play either 8-track in the car or 8-track in the house and stuff, and the speakers. And then what was the next thing? The next thing was, at some point, I drove the car, even after it came out of the lake, I drove the car from Kentucky up to North Carolina. And the only trouble I had, even after it being dumped in the water and all that stuff, was the rear end was making some noise almost to Winston-Salem. So I found a guy that was working in his garage, thank goodness next to the highway, at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I said, the back end is making some growling noises and stuff, and he greased it for me while I was there and didn't charge me anything, and I went on. And the next thing, let's see, at some point, that same car, I had it at college, but this may have been a little bit before. This probably was after the water, or maybe even before the water. Somebody broke into it at college and broke the wing window out. I don't think there was anything in the car to steal, but that's after they had already broken the window. But
How old was that Falcon?
it's a 1964 Falcon.
See, I was in college. I didn't even get to see that car.
You didn't.
It was blue.
It's blue and it had been wrecked when I got it. Not bad, just beat up a little bit.
So was that your first car?
No, probably third.
What happened to the other two?
Let's see. The first one was a 54 Chevy. I got it for $50 from a guy that worked at General Electric. He had run into a light post in the parking lot of General Electric. And so when I bought it, I think I bought or got another car same year, and I changed the doghouse, which is the front
Right.
fenders and the hood. And so I got all the dents out of it that way. And then I spray painted it a solid color. Might have been green with a white top. Maybe the white top stayed the same, and I just had to paint the doghouse green. So I'm in the Air Force now, living overseas in England, and I wake up one night, and it's like 2:30 in the morning, and I hadn't heard my daughter come home from whatever she was doing, and I go to the bedroom and she's not home. It's 2:30 in the morning. So I think about what I can do, and the first thing I did was my next door neighbor is the commander of the police squadron, the security police squadron on base, so I call him up and I ask him if he can check if he's had any kind of report that would include my daughter, because it's 2:30 and she's not home yet. So he calls in and checks, and they don't have any reports of anybody being found or missing or anything else. So I said, okay, thanks very much. And I hung up, and I'm thinking and trying to figure out what I can do or whatever. And I may have called a few other places to find out, and then nothing else to do. I go outside and I'm trying to think, and who's standing in the driveway? My daughter is standing at the end of the driveway talking to some guy at 2:30. Now it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and at least I now know she's home safe.
I've got a typical one of that. Ronnie and I had gone to the drive-in. Now this is about us, not the family. And we had watched the movies, and we were both just completely exhausted. We both fell asleep. I remember waking up to the song, Wake Up Little Susie. And so Ronnie drove me home, and as we're coming in the driveway, Mother and Daddy had spotlights on the house. The lights flash on, and Ronnie's walking me to the door, and Daddy said, if you ever bring my daughter home at 2 o'clock in the morning again, you won't see her again. And that was it. Ronnie was scared to death. He was shaking. And he says, I didn't know you had spotlights on the house. I said, well, I didn't think about it saying something like that, you know. Ronnie, you have anything to add to that?
He said he's gonna bust me in the mouth. I brought you in that lady.
Oh, bust him in the mouth. Ooh.
You'd have to see the house. When they flip the spotlights on, buddy, it's like lighting up the airport.
I would have said it looked like lighting up a prison yard, all the lights, because I know there had to be at least 6 floodlights across the back of the house.
Yeah.
It had to look like a prison yard.
Scared the crud out of me.
You know, there is one time when I was real little, I bet I wasn't but 5 or 6, and Ronnie had his gang of guys out in the, not my Ronnie, but my brother Ronnie. He had a bunch of guys out there throwing the football around. And I must have said I wanted to play, or, you know, something like that, something stupid a 5-year-old would say. So they picked me up and threw me from person to person to person. And I'll tell you, when they finally let me down, I ran in the house like you wouldn't believe. I thought I could have been a football. But that's one thing I remember. Ronnie and his guys, oh man, they were something else.
That is a scary thought.
Being thrown around by a bunch of guys.
Tossing a 5-year-old back and forth like they were a football.
Well,
Well, at least we know what's wrong with her now. No, it's a miracle we're still alive.
miracle, you're still alive.
Oh, yeah.
I tell you what, I think it's a miracle we're still alive.
We've had a good life.
We did. There's some things I'd change, but,
Quite a few.
hindsight's 20/20. Yeah. But what the heck.